Event brought to you by LIC of India.
Hello, hello. Are we on live? Is this us? It doesn't it?
Is that Kunal? Is that Tara?
Yes, it does. And I think
Looks a
we're
lot
live.
like us, yeah?
Yeah. I think we look better here than we looked in real life.
Oh my god, that's amazing.
I like this. Anyway, Tara, I think we are approaching Valentine's Day, and I thought this might be a nice flower to give you. What do you think?
Oh, it's lovely. I
Isn't
love
it lovely?
mums.
Yeah.
You also love mums, I believe.
What's mums?
Chrysanthemums.
Oh, is that what they're called? And you thought the other kind of mums. Right. Okay, Kala Ghoda watchers, welcome to Tara and I. The show is called She Cooks and He Looks. Isn't that what it's called?
Yeah.
Which speaks for itself.
Yeah.
In a way, yeah?
Looks
But
for itself also.
it, no. Listen, these are these rare occasions when I have a beauty sitting next to me. Normally, it's some sweaty cook. It's true, yeah. But this time we've got somebody who is not only
Women don't sweat. They
First they-
glow.
they glow and we perspire.
Yeah. And aspire.
True, women transpire, but
Ooh. And then eventually the men expire.
expires. We can go on like this forever. We can go on. So you can see that the
She
session.
limericks and he limericks.
Oh dear. You can see that this session is going to be quite nice and quite interesting. Great fun. Tara has already, we've got a clip of Tara cooking for us, which is very exciting because the food turned out really nice and I'm sure you're going to enjoy that. But before that, let's talk a little bit about Tara. And then if there is any time, we'll talk about me.
What a gentleman you are.
Yeah, then I'm a very giving person. I love to give. And give means give. Okay? Yeah. Okay, so here goes. Everybody knows Tara Deshpande. Tara Deshpande, besides everything, is an author of two books. Two books, right? Huh? 4 books? Oh shit, I'm so sorry. 4 books. All on food or sex or
No.
something like that? Food. Okay.
I only write about subjects I know well.
Okay, so she written 4 books on food. I've tasted her food. Her food's great. Uh, but eh, but most people also know Tara from a few years ago when she was doing films as an actress, theatre, and cinema. But you would be very serious kind of films. No, you don't do any Jhatak films. Imagine that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I jhataked on in one film and I mataked in another
Another
film.
film. And then you just got married and left the country.
That's true. Then I patkud out.
So tell me, when did the food sort of interest start? Because one would have thought when we met in younger days that you were on your way to finding a career in acting, in theatre, and while everybody does cook at home in some form or the other, you don't normally do such a large shift in career from acting to food. So what happened? How did you decide? And was it something you always loved doing?
I like many who enjoy cooking as a profession. I grew up in a family where people love to cook, and where I had great cooks, as teachers. My mom as well as my grandmothers on both sides, and so I had learned a fair bit in the kitchen. And I still come from the generation where mothers insisted that their daughters learn how to cook as part of the marriage resume.
Yeah. Better qualified.
Yeah.
She can cook
Yeah.
in 3 cuisines.
So now there's no marriage, but at least I can cook.
That's the end result of listening to your mother.
Yeah. Oh my God. You have to have someone to blame in life, right? And so when I moved to the US, there was obviously no Bollywood in Boston or in New York. And I was lonely because, it's a society where, people don't really come to your door as much as they do here.
Correct.
So unless you leave your home and seek friends and seek work, you're going to be pretty isolated. So that's what I did. I went looking, and I didn't really have very many skills, to be honest.
You have now?
Skills that can kills.
Yeah.
So there was an ad put out for they were looking for an Indian cook at a local school.
Okay.
And I think I said, okay, I can make dal chawal. So I showed up there, and I think because I looked Indian, they said she must know something. So they hired me. And that's how the journey began.
So you actually started as a cook in a school.
Yeah, I mean, I started as a teacher.
Oh, you were teaching cookery.
Yeah, the
Indian
blind
cookery.
leading the blind, basically.
Beautiful. And they wouldn't know the damn difference.
They wouldn't know the damn difference.
Yeah, dal. This is dal. It
Yeah.
is always so watery and tasteless.
Yeah, and the spices always float like dead fish on the top.
On the top.
So,
But then obviously, one, you were good at what you did, or you got more interested and you started taking this thing
no,
seriously.
I was incompetent.
Really?
And you know,
I'm a teacher.
Americans ask a lot of questions. They're very curious about the science of cooking and why everything has to be done.
Huh.
So they'd ask me questions like, "Why are you frying the onions so much?"
Huh.
And I was like, "Well, that's because my mother did that and my grandmother did that. How would I know why I fry the onions so much?"
And I never asked my mother why, and I'm not about to tell you why either.
Yeah, so I mean, I explained to them that in India, children don't ask their parents questions ever. Okay. So,
Very, very good role model that we are for
I know.
modern thinking Indians. Huh?
so
Listen to my mother, never ask questions, get a CV ready for your marriage market.
Yeah.
Very
I mean,
Horrible.
really, we're the dregs of like
They're really bad.
we're the dregs of like ancient India, right? You know,
Terrible.
like that whole in between old India and new India. That's us.
God,
So, yeah, I mean, come on, you know, corporal punishment still existed when I was growing up.
Your
And it
mother
must have
used to
been
whack you.
not enough, obviously.
My mother whacked me.
Yeah.
So did my teachers in school, so it was allowed.
You must have really got it, no?
Damn shit. I would be there horror stories if I had to start telling you what happened in school. Anyway, sorry for.
No. It's interesting, you know,
To know
the
how
idea
I
of
got
you being
beaten up.
whipped and beaten. So, I was going to make a very naughty joke there, but this is the Kalagura Festival. Families
it.
are watching, and we don't want to do that, right?
Who's watching? Nobody's watching. It's only you and me, 11 o'clock in the morning.
So basically, what happened is that so I needed to be efficient. You know, I don't like not being good at something that I do. So I started researching and I started studying and I went to classes myself and I picked up stuff and there was always that love for food, but the interest in its history and getting really good at it developed around that time. And then I went from teaching in one school to 5 or 6 schools to different cities. Then I started a catering company, and it moved on to that. And then I came back to India.
And you know, when you look at your book, at least your the book on your family, the spice book, the sense of spice.
Sense of spice, yeah.
It's got a lot of background writing on it, as in your research and your history. But it's one thing about being a student of history and research, and then another thing completely to be able to cook properly. So you've done, because there are historians who can't cook necessarily, I mean, they may, but still, there are two different fields. One is actually cooking, and the other one is knowing about food. So, and you've managed to straddle both quite well, haven't you?
I mean, that's very nice of you to say, but I think that I was lucky that I liked cooking, because it's like going to the roots of it all. See, because if you know how a dish is cooked, you know from its germ, from the seed, what the whole story is about.
Correct.
So whether you're a restaurant critic, or you're someone who writes about food history, or you're someone who cooks it or caters it, or food photography, for instance, which I do sort of in an amateurish way, because I can't afford professional food photographers.
Of course, sorry.
If you understand how a dish is made, you really know what you're trying to tell in a story. You understand when someone talks about how something is cooked a certain way and how it's linked up to the socio-economic situation or the conditions of its time. You see the link, For instance, let's take something like laddus. In ancient India, laddus were always made with unrefined sugar or jaggery.
Okay.
Because the refining of sugar didn't really come to India until the late 1800s. Most of the sugar was refined in other British colonies and then imported to India.
Okay.
So white sugar was extremely expensive. So today when you make a besan laddu, you're using white sugar, which is not traditional.
Correct.
We would
Yeah,
always use unrefined
Gur.
sugar, gur or jaggery.
Gur or jaggery.
And actually, the word jagaru is of Portuguese origin.
What is the making of jagru? I jagru.
Jagrut. Uh, so, so when you, for instance, actually have made a laddu and you start working with, if you have to work with refined sugar when you're making a besan laddu, the process will be different than if you're
Yeah,
actually
but
making with good.
Okay.
So you understand the difference. It's a subtle way of explaining it, but I'm saying that I find that fascinating. Like all the links, there are so many links between what people ate at certain times in history and everything else that was going on in international politics.
So let's do one thing, okay? Let's do an exercise, and I know it's very interesting because I love the stories. Yeah, and if we look at our eating habits today and look at eating habits 200 years ago, what are the big changes that you've seen? Not you. I'm not saying that you were alive 200 years ago, but if you go down history, what is it that we accept so easily today, which is actually completely should have been completely alien to us?
Well,
Like refined sugar, for example, and
Yeah.
other things as well.
I think industrialized farming and industrial processing of food is something that, with the Industrial Revolution began in the 1800s and really set in by mid and late 1800s, and that changed the world. It changed things for women, it changed things for children, it changed basically the whole globe.
Okay.
And then as we got into the 1900s, and America played a very big role in the industrialization and the marketing of refined and processed foods. And that's changed everything. And, if you look at studies where, a supermarket has opened close to the original, say, lands of where a tribe lives, and suddenly they have access to processed foods, they start developing problems that only people in urban areas have had for the last 50 or 60 years.
Correct.
Because suddenly they're eating everything refined wheat, which is so high in gluten, refined sugar. So I think we have moved much more from the raw and the less refined state to the more processed state. We've also moved from food that was difficult to source, that took time to cook, to very easily and quickly available express foods.
But give examples, like what is indigenous and what is not indigenous. What if I said if you coming from the Konkan area, if you talk about Konkan thali that you eat today, and if there was a Konkan thali that you ate 300 years ago, there'd be some things that were similar and some things that would not be there at all.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for instance, all coconut milk used to be pressed fresh.
Okay.
When I was a kid and I was visiting our homes in Karwar or Dharwar or Belgaum, that coconut milk was always made fresh. Today, almost no one does it.
Really?
Who does it?
You mean they do coconut milk in a curry? You
Yeah,
don't know?
coconut milk comes from
Like that,
cans and boxes and bottles and Tetra packs, right? It's not fresh. Now, there is a big difference between coconut milk that comes from a tin and freshly pressed coconut milk, in that freshly pressed coconut milk doesn't hold. It coagulates if it's overheated.
So you put it at the end.
Yeah, and that's why, our curries are very different. If you think of the Konkan curries, the seafood curries, whether it's Malvan or Sindhu Durga, or Karwar, for instance, we add the coconut milk towards the end and we cook it very little because we don't want it to split.
Correct.
Okay?
And
When
you don't need to cook it in any case that much.
Yeah, you don't need to cook it. But in other cuisines, coconut milk is sometimes cooked a lot more till its oil releases. We don't want that. If आमच्या curryवर एक तेलचं हे दिसलं म्हणजे
we don't
it's
like
done.
it.
We won't eat it. It's rancid to us. Same thing, when you use a ragdo
Ah,
to grind masalas,
Correct.
because stone is cold, unlike metal mixer grinders.
it becomes hot while
Hot, exactly.
Yeah.
Oil doesn't separate from the masala.
Ah.
It keeps the masala cool. And these are things that we have forgotten and we don't know. And there are so many things. I remember very clearly the Sumit mixer grinder entering my grandmother's home, and what an occasion it was. Because in a way, it was liberation from all the hours of hard work that had to be done. But other things happened too. Because the work was so difficult, women would get together and there was a sense of community and you cooked as a community. Right?
True.
That sort of disappeared once you had a mixer because you could just do it yourself.
Yeah, even I remember my grandmother, and for some reason, my grandmother used to wear a 9-yard sari to go to bed in the night. Okay, so when she woke up in the morning, she'd be in her 9-yard sari. She'd do all of her cooking in her 9-yard sari. And hence, when she sat on the floor on a wheel, because you were not cutting it's everything that was cut, whether it's onion, whether it was vegetables, fish, mutton. She sat on the floor with that wheel. I don't know what it's called in any other
You
language.
know, it's got a bunch of different names actually in languages. I forget now what it's called, but I'd actually done a piece on it. And I can't remember.
And she
I
just
need more coffee.
cut down, and then the masala would be ground. The only thing she'd taken the what is it called, the pata varvanta.
Huh.
I should put it on the this thing by that time. By the time I grew up, on the platform, so that you could stand and grind and not have to sit and grind on the floor. But there's also the advent of foreign invaders coming into India and bringing in ingredients that we didn't have, like the green chilies and the tomatoes, which were not really indigenous to
No, absolutely not.
to our land and country.
Yeah. And that we're looking at, you know, we associate that food coming in with Vasco da Gama in the late 1400s. I think he landed on the Malabar coast in the late 1400s.
Cochin, I think.
Of course, the poor guy gets all the credit for opening up the spice route, but actually his voyage failed, and he was fired.
Already?
Yeah, and he was replaced by somebody else who then actually opened up trade between the Portuguese and us, and then the rest of Europe. But you know, it's very interesting today. How can you think about food in India without a tomato?
No, you can't.
Without
I
corn.
can.
Without corn.
I can. You know, honestly, so hence I find that the closer you stay to your own cuisine, the less tomato you will use.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Right. Yeah.
I come from a community called the Bhattare Prabhus, and tomato is used only in a few dishes. Our main dishes don't use tomato.
We almost don't use it at all in the Saraswat
Yeah,
community.
we don't use green chilies. We use green chilies, but not with the kind of green chili use that say North India has. You know, with green chili pastes and all that. We were just used to garnish and all that.
Interestingly, we use it a fair bit, and this is an interesting subject for discussion. I'll come back to exactly what you were saying. I recall one time I put out this fish curry recipe. It was a Karwari recipe. And for those who don't know, Karwar is very close to Goa, and Karwar has a cuisine that is, of course, has plenty of seafood, but it's unique from the cuisine of Goa. So we'll talk about that later. But so I did this thing where I put chopped coriander leaves on top. And my God, people on social media were, how could you do this? In this Karwari curry, we never garnish with fresh coriander. And हे मोठं म्हणजे हे सुरू झालं.
It became
Started.
into a controversy.
And what's interesting is that there were people saying that if you are a Saraswat who comes from Mumbai, chances are you will put coriander because this is a very Mumbai influence.
Okay.
But if you are originally from Karwar, you will not do it. But I didn't understand this because all my atyas and kakis and maushis who are from Karwar
And lived in Karwar.
and from Goa used to put a little bit on top. It's the same thing with green chilies. You know, when did we start using green chilies so much in our cooking? Now, during religious occasions, for instance, or tomatoes are almost never used in our community, ever. So it's and like if you take a recipe, for instance, Kunal, like varan, that is a quintessentially traditional recipe because if you break the components of it down, you've got tur dal, which is native to the subcontinent.
Correct.
You have jeera,
Yeah.
cumin, which is native to the subcontinent.
Haldi.
Halad or haldi, turmeric, and you have jaggery in it. We never put sugar in it. You put jaggery in it.
Okay.
Toop or ghee, and some people use curry patta, and some people may add green chili in the vagar or the fodni or the tadka.
But
as
there's
it's
no
called.
vagar in the varan, no?
Always there's a vagar.
Really?
Oh, it's a base tempering.
Oh.
Some people like to put it from the top, but in my household it was always done with. It's
okay.
always there's always spiced with
With jeera.
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 Okay, not with anything else. And if you think about it, all these ingredients are asafoetida or hing.
Yeah, hing
Uh,
is big.
Yeah, now hing, of course, we say the history goes back that Alexander the Great brought it because it was used in Greece and Macedonia.
Yeah.
But it goes back even further. There's the myth that it was Prometheus. Yeah. So Prometheus was needed to transport fire, right? You know the tale of that.
I don't.
So he needed to hide this fire from the gods. So he found the hing plant. The hing plant is what you call, it's a caudiciform root. So it grows above the soil and there's a resin inside which is the hing, and you bleed it and then it solidifies and you grate it and it becomes hing.
Oh, that's
So he hit fire in
Sap.
that.
Isn't it sap?
Sap. resin.
Correct, resin.
Yeah. So he hid this, this, what is it called? What was I saying? The fire in that root, and while transporting it somewhere along the line, this hing or whatever was distributed in India. It's a myth, but it's very interesting that it goes back to this period of time,
To Prometheus.
to Prometheus. So
I know promiscuous. I don't know what Prometheus is.
I think you're thinking too much of Valentine's Day.
I know, God. But listen, let's come to our what we are going to, what you're going to cook, okay? So we are going to cook something from your part of the world,
Huh.
okay?
Our part of the world, no?
Well, I'm still a little English, so I'm like, our
The
taste are
English Babu, Desi,
Well, I'm not-
name. Ha.
So okay, I can't call myself Konkani or from the Konkan area. I'm a Mumbaikar, born and brought up here. My community also is very Mumbai. So we have
The Patare Prabhus are
we have very
classically-
little we have very little in common with coastal cuisine of the Konkan. Although we are a coastal
community.
people,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So which is very interesting
It
because
is very interesting.
our use of coconut, unlike the whole coast, and we're talking of the whole Konkan coast and the Malabar coast, all the way going up to Visakhapatnam and all, everybody, wherever there's coast, there's coconut. Our use of coconut is minimal.
That's very
We
interesting.
use coconut only in curries, which is a coconut curry. So if you're making a coconut curry, you use coconut. If you're not making a coconut curry, which is half the cuisine, you don't use coconut, including our meats, our fish, our vegetables. I find that the Saraswats use coconut in everything. Into vegetables also, everything is got fit.
Is that a dig?
It's a big dig. I do it with all the Saraswats. I'll tell you
You're
why.
digging a big hole, huh?
No, I'll tell you why. Because
For yourself.
I have a lot of family, Saraswat family. My
The family is Alia.
my mother, no, and they all
First Barb treats, now family.
and they all hate my food. They say, "Hey, kai, there's no coconut in this. This is the reaction." I'm
But,
saying,
you know-
"Look, we don't need to put coconut in everything."
Yeah.
And then they sneer at my food. These Saraswats,
I've never sneered at anybody's food.
other people, not you. I know you're very sweet. I'm talking about generally.
Generally.
They sneer at this. What is this cuisine? The gravy is so thin. We need thick
See,
gravy.
that's a very good one because see, most of Patare Prabhu cuisine is thin rasas, which is actually very healthy if you think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
Okay. We are used to a thicker curry, so we do like a dabdaba, which is a Karwari classic, which
Coconut?
is very, very thick.
Yeah.
Saraswat use a lot of coconut. It's very
Yeah.
true. Even on top, we garnish with a lot of coconut. So our uppama also has to have little coconut on top. But I think it's seen as a sign of, it's seen as a sign of freshness because it was always freshly grated coconut. It was available in everyone's backyard.
Correct.
It's like a lot of souring agents. Now the Konkan has very unique souring agents, not just tamarind.
Yeah.
But we use sour mango, we use bilimbi,
Kokum.
kokum, we use hot plums, ambado, lots of like unusual souring agents, and these grow in people's backyard. So you just go pluck it and you use it.
Put it.
You don't have to think about it so much. And this, of course, makes the cuisine extremely sour. So how do you balance that sourness out? You add sweet coconut.
Ah,
If you think about Konkan food, the only comparison I can think of is probably Rayalaseema cuisine, where you have this balance both in textures and in flavors. Sweet, spicy, salty, sour, always, almost every dish. Not every, and there must be something like, for instance, we'll take beets and we'll mix it with like chickpeas and we'll make a rasa out of it. So you have the
Okay.
soft velvety beets and then you have the crisp
of
chickpeas.
chickpea. Okay.
Think about so many dishes that are like that. Take a kakrichi koshimbri or karelichi koshimbri,
Karela I don't like, but kakadi should be like a khamang kakadi. no?
khamang kakri.
Yeah. I love peanuts. Lots
Yeah.
of peanuts.
Think about all the textures. Think about how carefully thought out that dish is. So it's a like you take a dish like methkoot, take a gourd masala, take a kala masala. Look at the number of components in it, and they all. I mean, a gourd masala has almost like 20 or 30 different elements. So
Elements
does
in it, yeah.
methkoot, but each one plays its part. You take one of those out,
and it changes the
and it
taste.
changes the whole thing. That's really the beauty of all Indian food, generally,
True.
right?
True. It is. It's a fairly complex cuisine.
Very
And the
complex.
complexity comes not only in the various ingredients that you use in the cooking, but also the main spice itself, including your garam masala, your sambar masala, or goda masala, whatever you call it. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Indian food.
Speaking of sambar, you buy the theory that it's of Maharashtrian origin?
Even sambar.
Sambar.
Some idli sambar, sambar.
Sambar, yeah.
Well,
You-
I
you
don't
buy
know.
that
This
theory?
is the theory because it's named after Sambhaji,
Huh.
and because Maharashtra did rule most of the south and all the way up to the north before the second battle
The
of
Maratha Empire.
the Maratha Empire.
Panipat.
Yeah. Uh, it is possible that this thing was created to please Sambhaji by his sort of empire in the south and named after him. It's
But that
possible.
way you could say every bhaji is named after Sambhaji.
Which Bhaji?
I'm just saying, no, if you break it up etymologically like that, there are many different things you can pull out of this, no?
No, but this is the name is similar. No? That is why they're saying it. If I say Vanga and Sambhaji, they've got nothing to do with each other.
Vangi is again a very interesting word. Huh? Do you know
Yes.
it's one of the only vegetables in the world that has such disparate names across the globe?
Yeah.
Eggplant, brinjal,
Aubergine.
aubergine, vangi.
Aubergine.
At least Bengal and brinjal have something in common.
Yeah.
But it's completely, and again, I think it's native to the subcontinent. It
I'm not
originates
sure.
in the subcontinent.
You,
Yeah, I think
you're
so.
the expert.
No. So, it's such a confluence. You have people who have come, we've been ruled by so many colonizers, we've had invasions in India, and all of them have either brought in techniques that are new or they've brought in ingredients that are new. And in that truest sense, I mean, what a cuisine!
It is.
I mean-
for my money, the best cuisine in the world.
Absolutely.
I know we've got real complexity and richness and heritage in Southeast Asian cuisines, but we have as much, and the variety we get in our 26, in our 26, how many states do we have in the country right now? 26, 28, whatever. In our several states.
You're gonna get trolled.
I'm gonna get trolled.
You're going to be told, and this is your fault.
My fault.
You put your foot in it.
No, I have a very bad memory for numbers. Anyway, so I've forgotten how much I weigh also. Do I weigh 100 or 102 at this point in time? It's similar. So it is the greatest cuisine in the world.
Yeah.
I know the French will disagree with me, but
No, and that's again a good,
Bad
interesting comparison you should make, because the French have catalogued their cuisine since from
Escoffier.
yeah, Taiwan, Escoffier, Anton Carême, name it, they've done it. Okay, we have never done that because ours was an oral tradition. So even today, when we're describing techniques, okay, we're using French terms to describe them. And I'm thinking, we were cooking 5,000 years ago before a Frenchman picked up a wooden spoon. How come we don't have terms to describe? Now, let me give you an example. Sindhi curry, right?
correct.
So when you make you cook the besan,
Huh.
you put oil, you do tadka, you cook this besan to make
Correct.
what you're making is essentially a roux.
In a way, yes.
It is.
Okay.
You don't use animal fat, which in New Orleans they use lard, or somewhere else they use tallow, but you use a. So we don't have a term to explain that. We're always borrowing terms from other cuisines to explain julienne. When actually you think about it, we have so many unusual cuts of vegetables that we do. Kappa. You know how our French beans, when we make a rusal, how we cut it on a bias like this.
Correct.
We
Yeah.
we don't have terms for this, and it's sad because our cuisine is older than the cuisines from which we are borrowing all these terms. And the problem, there's two problems there. One is because we have so many languages. I don't know. There could be terms
How to
in
explain what
Korea.
you-
There could be terms in Assamese. I don't know.
True.
And also ours is an oral tradition. We don't
Yeah.
write as much as we talk, like us. We just talk and
Yeah.
talk and
I
talk.
think we should make notes about everything we've said because there are pearls of wisdom in this that we've discussed.
I love pearls.
No, no, don't go to jewelry.
Sab
Ah.
jo laaye phool.
Well, that is enough for Valentine's Day. One flower is enough for you now. Okay, so which is
Pearls are a
great.
girl's best friend.
No diamonds.
I'll take that also.
I think pearls, cheaper, and you can get what are they called?
From-
Sculptured pearls.
Oh
Also.
my god. How uncultured of you.
Okay, so what are you cooking today? Before I know you're cooking prawns. You're making a curry out of it. And since you were talking about the Karwar side and the Goa side and the Malwad side and the Sawantwadi side and all that, uh, and this is my one little grouse about food of Maharashtra.
So far in this conversation, you have about 4 grouses.
I have several.
So you're
grouses.
running out of grouses now. This is your last one.
Famous grouse, lovely. Uh, very nice. So, Maharashtrian cuisine, I think it's still fair. I'm calling it Maharashtrian cuisine, although you can call it Karnataka cuisine or Goan cuisine, is a bit unsung per se. The two cuisines that seem to dominate Mumbai's fame is the Malwani cuisine and whatever we call Brahmani food, Punecha, where you get pitla, bhakri, and all the snacky, Kothimir vadi and patata vada, samudara vada and all that.
Yeah.
And
Thali
Thali. But Malwani food, considering that Malwani is such a small village on the big coast that we have, what is it that makes Malwani food far more popular than say Karwari food or Sawantwadi? Go and eat in Sawantwadi or Kubal. It's beautiful.
Beautiful food.
Yeah.
Well, I think it depends on the communities that came to Mumbai and set up businesses. So, we have a great love for South Indian food here.
Yeah.
Because we have so many cafes that were started in the 60s.
Correct.
And it's the same thing, when the Shetties started opening up restaurants here. The food was Mangalorean. And so we have Mangalore curries, and then of course there's a lot of coconut and all of that. Yeah. There are Saraswats in Mangalore too. I think the Chitrapur Mart is there. Yeah. So again, as you can trace all this is very interesting. You can trace all this to history, to major movements in the world. Hornby Vellard project starts, Paikala is created, a club is born, and suddenly all these exciting French desserts enter India. Some of them die off when the club gets sold off, some of them remain. We're still consuming them today.
Correct.
So you can sort of link it all up.
Hornby Vellard was built by my distant relative.
Yeah. You're getting a commission on it?
Nothing. I should have put a toll booth over there.
How terrible is this?
First, you should tell people what Hornby Vellard is.
This was a project started in the 1700s by Governor Hornby, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And it was to join the islands of Mumbai. How many islands were there?
7.
So you remember the islands were not the states of India.
I think the 7 islands were the 7 islands that were gifted to the Portuguese. Actual Mumbai islands were 24.
24. See, you're not so bad at numbers.
No, see, I forgot that. 24 or 28. Because little islands, Bucha Island, this thing island.
Kulaba, little Kulaba.
Yeah.
And it was to join these islands together. And the process started, it took nearly 100 years to complete. But then Baikala was born because the embankments were filled. And Baikala became one of the most elite and posh places to live in. David Sassoon lived there. He had, his
Messina Hospital.
Messina Hospital. It was Sans Souci. That is what it is.
Sans
Souci. And of course, the richest people lived there. All the whites lived there. Anyways, obviously they needed a club, and so the Baikala Club was born.
Correct.
That's another interesting story. Coming back to...
But Hornby Vellard is basically the road that connects Haji Ali to Wali.
Yeah.
That's the strip.
That's the strip.
And that's the strip that is going to go in 2 years now from now. It's gone. Because we've got a brand new road coming. And it's not going to be called Hornby from any angle. So
All's Vellard, the rain's Vellard.
Oh God, that is so funny. Okay, listen, I think we've talked a hell of a lot. I think a little bit of cooking is due.
Yeah.
You're going to make a nice prawn curry. What style is it?
Well, this is again from Karwar, Goa also. And it's a slightly offbeat curry, and it's in my book, A Sense for Spice. And you can find the full recipe with measures on my website, taradeshpande.in. It's called Udid Methi.
Udid Methi?
Yeah.
Famous in Goa also.
Yeah, famous in Goa also. And it's a little bit unusual because it has in it fenugreek seeds, methi seeds, hence methi. And it has in it udid or urad dal, urido in Konkani. which gives this curry a very unusual flavor and also very unusual texture. And traditionally, it's made with bhangra or mackerel, but someone here doesn't like
I'm not a big Bangla fan
bhangra fan.
because
I love
fussy.
Bhangra.
Yeah,
I could do bhangra all the time.
that's why if you do this Bangla, then you need tomato and onion paste in it.
That's true. But it still tastes good.
Yeah, true.
But bhangra is to me an absolutely fantastic
I
fish.
become the blame. All blame comes to me for not
Blame
liking
the Bhangra.
Yeah, but I
So
like prawns. I think prawns are better than Bangla.
he likes his prawns. So we're going to make prawns today, prawns fry.
Yeah.
And so you can make this with other fish also. But the reason bhangra is used is because, like methi, it's a little bit bitter. It's a meaty fish, and it brings a certain
Oilier.
balance. It's oilier, it brings a certain balance to the dish. But what's really lovely about this recipe is that there is also a vegetarian version of this, which is made with kairi or raw mango, which is completely vegetarian. It's a slightly the steps and some of the ingredients are a little bit different, but it's made for occasions when you don't want to eat meat. So we're gonna make this with prawns,
But you're going to add the raw mango to this dish
as a souring agent.
as a souring agent, which makes it. I just love raw mango in most things.
I love it. I
In
think
curries, it tastes fantastic, and I tell you, even my dear friend Zenobia Irani, in her pasi omelets and in her pasi curry, even if you're making a pora, you put raw mango in it. It
It's
just
yummy,
tastes
and it gets so
yum.
soft, it gallows,
Yeah.
in the thing. And so we're going to be using that. This is one of those curries where you don't use coconut.
Correct.
If you don't have raw mango, then chintz is what you should use.
Chinsa.
Chintz.
Chinsa.
Chintz.
Yeah.
Just say that again.
You people now who go, it's chins. It's not chins. It's chinsa. Like a big drum.
So
where
it's
you
not
fill-
like that sofa material chintz.
No. And that big drum that you fill with water is called pimper and not pimp. Got it? Okay.
My lips are.
Yeah. So let's get down to the cooking. The cooking is exciting, and I shall tell. If I may say so, they've got three of my favorite ingredients in this. One is the prawn, of course. Two is raw mango, and the third one, whether it sounds like I don't like coconut. I really do like coconut. I may complain about Saraswat using too much coconut and everything, but I like coconut. And I think coconut also goes into this in two steps. One in the masala as well as in the coconut milk in the curry. Okay, so let's get cooking. And in true, how do you say? In true faithfulness to the name of this particular talk, she cooks and he looks.
Thank you guys, and
Cut to cooking. Go.
hi everyone, my name is Tara Deshpande, and today I'm going to be cooking up a storm for a very special occasion. Because it's the Kala Ghoda festival, and I also have a very special guest who's going to be tasting this food. I'm going to introduce you to him in a few seconds. But before that, what am I cooking today? Well, I'm making a classic curry from the Konkan region. It's associated mostly with Goa and Karwar. But it's a little bit unusual because it has a couple of offbeat ingredients in it that you don't associate with curries from the Konkan or curries from the Malvan. This dish is called prawns urid methi. Urido in Konkani means urad dal, and it's traditionally made with mackerel, but we're making it with prawns today. There's also a vegetarian version of it. It's organically vegetarian. It's not the seafood version made vegetarian, but that's made with raw mango. So as soon as you can get your hands on some raw mango, do try it the vegetarian way as well. You'll find both recipes on my website at taradeshpande.in. So come on, let's go into my kitchen and meet our special guest and make this delicious udid methi. Hello everyone, look who's here with me today in my home kitchen.
Yes.
The one and only Kunal Vijaykar, the foodie.
Oh dear. The big fan of Tara Deshpande. actually.
Oh, check is in the mail. Huh?
Yeah, check this in the mail. And this is the food. By the way, look at all this.
And the prawns are going to be in the wok soon.
Where are the prawns?
So we're going to be cooking up a favorite of Kunal's, which is a dish from Goa. You love Goan food,
I
no?
love Goan food. I love prawns. And I've seen coconut. And I like coconut milk also.
Today is udid methi. We're using a whole variety of interesting ingredients. I managed to get hold of a raw mango. And here we have some tinsa, or which just fell off the tree, literally. And here we have black peppercorns, we have some cumin seeds, we have some coriander, we have some pedgi or byadgi chilies. We're also using some coconut, which is fresh, only the white meat part of the coconut. We're going to start first by making the spice paste, right? The seeds, the rice,
Avoid me, huh?
cumin seeds, black peppercorns, and of course the star of the show, methi seeds. So now I'm going to toast these spices. This is the red chilies, the dried byadgi chilies. You can also use Kashmiri, some coriander seeds and some methi seeds or fenugreek seeds. And Kunal, I'm going to cook them until they're kind of toasty and fragrant. And then we're going to grind them into a lovely spice paste. The red chilies. And of course, second important ingredient, urad dal. This is skinned black gram. And we're going to toast these real nice. I'm going to let this cool completely. It's important that this cools. A little bit of oil. Into this, I'm going to put the coconut. Okay, so I'm going to switch off this flame. And I'm going to grind all these together. Will you pour a little oil in here for me, Kunal? Just a little. And in this, I am going to add some green chilies. Adding a little bit of onion. In order to do that, I'm going to add a little bit of salt. Now into this, I'm going to put.
So this is ground to a coarse powder, and
Yeah.
I can get these really strong masala aromas.
Can you smell the methi?
Let me try. Yeah, I can smell the methi. It's
coriander, the
very,
cumin.
Very strong. Very nice. This is lovely masala.
Now into this, I'm going to put the masala, and I'm going to put a little bit of haldi powder. So I'm going to cut some of this mango and add it to my curry. Just some generous slices right here. You know, this is going to bring that lovely sour flavor to the curry, which is so typical of curries made in Goa and along the Konkan coast. I'm also actually going to use a little bit of tamarind paste in it because it's just going to make the flavors more complex and interesting. Now, if you don't have raw mango, of course, it's not the season. We were lucky we got some. You can just stick with using chinsa or tamarind. Now, as this gravy cooks, these mango slices are going to become really nice and soft and absolutely yummy. Will you take out a little thins from this for me?
Of course I will. What do you want to do this?
Take the seeds too. So I'm going to add a little bit of
Carry to
a
this.
few kairi pieces to it. Now into this, I'm going to add the prawns. And I'm going to add just a little bit of coconut milk to get the process started.
Oh, this looks lovely. So here we are. I think our prawn curry or udid methi is finally ready.
So our udid methi with prawns is almost ready, and I wanted to take this opportunity to recommend that you eat it with plain white boiled rice and not a basmati rice. Try it with ambe mohar rice, which is available in markets and online as well. This is a short grained rice that is very fragrant, that's just a little bit sticky, and we use it a lot on the Konkan coast because it has this ability to absorb gravies and to sort of become all lovely and moist and squishy. So you know, in India, hum log haath se khate hain na, so we take the hot boiled rice when it's come out of the pressure cooker and we kind of mix it together nicely, and this breaks open the grain and allows it to absorb all the yummy flavors of the coconut, the udid methi, the prawns, the beautiful red chilies that we've put in it, and it just multiplies the flavor quotient. So definitely try it. If you don't have Ambe Mohar rice, use another slightly sticky rice. Even Govindo Bhog rice is lovely. You can use poni rice also, which works well, I feel, with this curry. And if you don't have all those, there's also kolam rice that you can use. So enjoy your meal and do try the recipe. So here is the delicious prawns urid methi. So now Kunal has enjoyed this dish. My guest is satisfied. So I think I'm going to enjoy my meal as well.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for joining us. Do make it. The recipe is on my website taradeshpande.in and you'll get all the measures there. Remember to grind that masala very, very fine. You don't want it to be fibrous.
चीनू के जाने के बाद घर कितना सोना सोना हो जाएगा, नहीं?
कहो तो मैं रिटायर हो जाऊं?
अभी एजुकेशन लोन और रिटायरमेंट के खर्चे ना बाबा ना।
और अगर रिटायरमेंट ऑलरेडी सिक्योर्ड हो तो
फिर हो जाओ रिटायर। और वैसे भी शाम की चाय साथ पीना काफी रोमांटिक है, नहीं?
चले। स्मार्ट लोगों की क्लियर है प्रायोरिटी, बाकी सब बाद में। सेकंड इनिंग से पहले LIC।